And now, you're tuned into RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
Hello, everyone out there in Tampa Bay and beyond, and our producer, Eureka, who was in here for just a couple of moments. We are live tonight to talk about the Rowdies on a Monday as opposed to a Tuesday. That's when we usually go. But today, Carlos, we are covering it on a Monday because the Rowdies actually played a day earlier as well. Anyway, all of that out of the way, Carlos, before we even get started, I do want to bring up the lovely song intro that we had here. What genre of music was that? Eureka, you gotta give me the genre at least. I wouldn't know if that's like rock country. It's not like Florida Georgia line country, but I don't know exactly where to place that.
There was a lot going on right there at the beginning of the show, James. We haven't even started. Eureka made a rare visual appearance in a box. We had the country rock, pop, Rowdies, hyper specific song to that game against Hartford. Lovely way to start off the show here. James, we'll jump into that song a bit more later on. I feel like I can't just skip over that. That was like the groundbreaking. I don't know. That's a word for it. Okay, James, here we are. It's a Monday, like you said, recording slightly earlier, and we're live than usual. It was a game against Hartford. I'm not sure I can say much more than that. It wasn't a particularly exciting one, but we'll jump into that in just a little bit. So many other games going on around the league, though, that had a bit of a helpful effect for your Tampa Bay Rowdies. We'll talk a little bit about those as well. But yeah, it seemed like this universe was in favor of the Rowdies this weekend. So we can jump into all that. I'm really happy. It was a good weekend. Ecuador lost, unfortunately. I'm in Copa America mode. Estamos en modo Copa America, unfortunately. Ener Valencia decided to karate kick a Venezuelan defender 20 minutes into the game, and we went down a player very early on. Somehow went up 1-0 with 10 players and weren't able to hold on. But whatever. We played Jamaica on Wednesday. That'll be a fun one. 2 must-win games for Ecuador. USA was off to a good start. This is all extra time stuff, but just so much soccer going on, James. It's hard not to talk about it all. The Euros are going on. That's been my life. I've been sitting on the couch. I've been watching a lot of soccer, and I don't feel bad about it at all. James, how are you? What's going on in your life?
Yeah, I have also been watching a ton of soccer. I am sure that everyone is shocked to hear us say that, Carlos. We never watch a ton of soccer. That's very rare for both of us. So I'm sure that we are, like I said, shocking everybody who's tuning in and actually listening to this saying, wow, I cannot believe that those two guys who talk about soccer all the time are doing that again. But yes, we are. We are talking about soccer again. Last Friday night is the game that we will get to in a bit. But as you said, Carlos, there were a couple of other games. Shout out to Liz and Tom. I ran into them at Eckerd College watching Tampa Bay United take on St. Pete FC on Saturday. Unknowingly, I didn't realize that they would be there. So it's very funny. Those are our RBLR Sun podcast people, and they do obviously a very good job there. But if we want to talk about the game that we're here to talk about, Carlos, we can actually get into that. As you said, it was a game. We don't have too much more to say about it than that at this point. We're going to have to break it down a little bit further, but I really don't know exactly how we're going to do so without a lot of sighs and groans. But yes, the last week on Friday, the Rowdies went away to Hartford and scraped a 1-0 win out of that match. So 3 points is 3 points, and a win is a win. In our standings, everyone got a point. I don't know how often that happens, but congratulations to all of us. Carlos, you still lead with 8. And now we have another chance to get a point for our own prediction standings because we have a game coming up this weekend at Loudoun United. And there's something now, Carlos, there was something about this game that I was supposed to mention. What was I supposed to bring up? Am I forgetting something?
No, you are actually. I don't know how you are. I mean, this is going to be a regular reminder for the next 5 days on Twitter. I'm sure I will make sure of it. Eureka will make sure of it. Yeah, this Saturday we'll keep reminding you throughout the week. We RBLR Sports Podcast are hosting a watch party. Oh my goodness, I can't. Do you hear that? Hosting a watch party. What does that even mean? We're hosting a watch party at Berry House Beer Company in Ybor. The game's at 7 p.m. against Loudoun United, and we'll jump into that game in a bit just on this episode as well. But yeah, it's going to be a fun one. We'll have a 6:15 p.m. live pregame show. We'll have beer pitcher specials at Berry House. Thank you for having us. We'll have halftime swag giveaway, including some merchandise from your very own Tampa Bay Rowdies. It's going to be a lot of great stuff, a lot of good times, and more importantly than any of that, Rowdies family to share a game with. So even though we're away, we can make Berry House feel a bit like Al Lang Stadium. Come join us, 7 p.m. Saturday, June 29th, this Saturday, against Loudon. Again, 6:15 live pregame show, beer pitcher specials. No reason for you not to be there in the heart of nightlife in Tampa Bay, Ybor City. So perfect time. It sounds like a good Saturday night to me. Be there.
There you go. You have your marching orders from Carlos. I was going to scream into the microphone, but that would hurt everybody's ears who's listening. So I'll just go, oh, yeah, all right.
Yeah.
That's what it's going to sound like at Berry House times whatever. We'll see how many people show up to help us out with that, obviously. Please like and subscribe to us on YouTube or any major podcast platform. And of course, please follow us on social media like Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Threads, everywhere. That's where you will get not only these reminders about our watch parties, but also anything else we post ever about anything, including all the other sports and teams in Tampa Bay, like the Tampa Bay Sun. Now, Carlos, let's do the quick recap of this game from Friday before we do our questions and analysis and somehow drag that segment into something that isn't 2 seconds of size.
Yeah. I can go through this lineup really, really slow if you want me to. I can drag it out a bit. So Farr was in goal. And in front of him, you had Kleeman and Jordan Doherty and Aaron Guillen. That was your back three. Ahead of them on the wing back spots, you had Pacific Nyongabire. That was really loud. Manjoma on the other side. And between them, you had Crisostomo and Lewis Hilton in more of an attacking role. You saw Josh Perez again, your main man in the starting 11 guy we've talked about so much throughout this season already, and his enhanced role this year.
Yeah.
Word for it. Kyle Jennings up top. And I think the surprise start in this one was Charlie Dennis. Not that him being in the lineup is a surprise, but I think the surprise was seeing Arteaga on the bench. There was no word of any injury or anything like that to him. So maybe there was a light thing and, Nielsen wanted to save him for a bit. Nonetheless, you'd come in and score the game-winning goal later on. Maybe I'm spoiling it, but it's not really much to talk about, so I can just skip to that as well. But this was a game, James, that we've kind of hinted at. It was a bit boring, to say the least. The Rowdies were certainly stifled throughout the game. Certainly in that first half, not a ton of opportunities. If you were
not for us anyway,
right? And Hartford actually had a couple of good looks, even when they went down a player, which happened right before halftime. Forgetting the guy's name, doesn't really matter. You got a second yellow right before halftime. Rowdies go up a player, or rather, Hartford goes down a player for essentially the entire second half. And it didn't really change much for the Rowdies. We're still incredibly stifled. Not a lot of opportunities for us. I can think of 2 clear opportunities off the top of my head. It was a Kyle Jennings one-on-one half look. That was actually a really good save from the Hartford goalie. Cal could have done maybe a little bit better. The clearest chance of the half was an Arteaga look. Ball ran out to him just at the top of the box. He had the whole goal.
Yeah.
But again, it was a Hartford goalie, Ribeiro, who made an incredible stop there. Interestingly enough, he was subbed out in the 84th minute, and it wasn't him that would concede the game-losing goal for them. It was Monroe for Hartford. Greg Monroe would come in the 84th minute.
Making his debut.
Was it? Was his debut?
I think his professional debut.
Yeah, it's a rather unfortunate timing because for whatever reason, Ribeiro came out. Greg Monroe subs in the second half. And 3 minutes after he comes in, Damian Rivera draws a penalty and Arteaga slots it home. So not the situation you want to come into a game as a backup goalie ever, I guess. You never really want to come in for such a short amount of time, and certainly don't want to lose a game like that. But it's a penalty. It is what it is. Thank God for Rivera, an incredible run from him, be able to draw that penalty on a chance that frankly didn't seem like it would have much for us anyway. If he got by that defender, it didn't look like it would have led to much, but thankfully a silly mistake from Hartford led to a free opportunity for the Rowdies, and Arteaga slotted it home. One of my friends referred to Arteaga as a penalty merchant in recent times. You know what? I'll take it. Thank you, Arteaga, for being a penalty merchant.
Yes.
Slotting these goals away. I would rather him be known as a penalty merchant and putting those penalties away than not putting them in at all. So that's where we are. an important 3 points, like a really, really important 3 points, despite how boring that game was, despite how unceremonious the goal was, how unmonumental the game was. It's a huge 3 points because jumping into the standings, Indy lost at home to Orange County, and Louisville City lost at home to Rhode Island in a shootout, by the way. Rhode Island put 5 goals by Louisville away to Louisville. And another slept on or slightly under the radar result was that Charleston dropped points in Phoenix. They tied with Phoenix Rising 0-0. Obviously, both got 1 point. And because of that, the Rowdies were able to make up even more ground on these Eastern Conference teams who still are ahead of them, but now not by much. Louisville City stays on top with 35 points, ahead of Charleston, who now has 30 points. Indy has 29 points, and we have 28 points. Keep in mind, we have a game in hand on all those teams I just mentioned above us. So, hypothetically, a win this weekend would jump us into second place. Again, hypothetical. Have to win. And again, it would put us 4 points behind Louisville. That win against Louisville recently, looming very large right now as well, right?
Yep.
Closing that gap on the Louisville team that seemed, frankly, to me, out of reach just a couple of weeks ago. I was talking with you on this episode or on this podcast about how it seems like the second and third place battle is really what we're looking at right now. But with just one weekend of a couple interesting results, it seems like we're back in that race, and that's lovely to see. Okay, there's your top 4 in the Eastern Conference. You go all the way down to our neighbors in Miami, who have just 8 points. They were winning 2-0 and conceded 2 goals in the second half to our opponents this weekend, Loudoun. They tied 2-2 at home to Loudoun United, and again, only have 8 points this year. Very sad to see. Out west, New Mexico United lead with 28 points. Sacramento have 25. And Oakland have 23. If we're talking about streaks, New Mexico, by the way, keeps up their insane run. I'm losing the number off the top of my head. They've just gone an insane number of wins here at home in a row. So they're doing really well. Obviously, first place out there. Oh my God, there's one more team I'm forgetting. One more team drops points after going on a good streak. Oh, Colorado finally lost a game. Remember, we mentioned them last weekend. They've gone to something like 8 league games in a row without losing. They finally dropped a game this weekend to New Mexico United, the first place team out west. So plenty of storylines from the weekend, plenty of winning streaks, undefeated streaks came to an end this weekend. And thankfully for the Rowdies, a lot of those streaks were the teams ahead of them. So again, Rowdies closing the gap with the Eastern Conference. I'm going a little bit longer here on rambling about the standings, but these were huge, huge results for the Rowdies, and a storyline that I think was frankly even bigger than the Rowdies win itself from this weekend. So thank you for all these teams that gave our, opponents or our rivals up in the East a challenge. It's making the race in the Eastern Conference look even more interesting than it already was. So that's that. Also, El Paso's in last place in the Western Conference with 12 points, sadly. Love that little team over there, Locomotive, but they're terrible right now, and they only have 12 points. Not the last place team in the league, though. That would go to the Miami FC. Okay, James, let's make an episode of this game. Let's make it more of an event than it really was. Like you said in our notes here, this game was a lot like this game against Oakland, but we won this one, and that's good. Okay, so let's just jump into that first. What was different about this game and the game against Oakland? Is there anything different, or are we just going to say it's the same game with a slightly different result that favors us much more than that game against Oakland?
I'm personally inclined to say that it was almost the same game as Oakland, as you said. The thing that was different was...
I just want to mention also, by the way, 2 similarities. It seems like whenever we have a terrible away broadcast, the Rowdies play terribly. So let's get on that list now. Oakland, terrible broadcast. I thought it was the worst I've ever seen. And then somehow Hartford came in and went punch for punch with it, and we played equally as poorly. Sorry, James, take it away. I just wanted to mention that because I feel like we cannot talk about these games without mentioning how bad the broadcast was. I can't let that go untalked about.
Well, there was literally technical issues for 10 minutes that we missed all of that portion of the game. So that was not the best part. But yeah, for the game itself, I think that this was as I said, very similar to the game versus Oakland. The difference was that they did not score any of the chances that they had. Obviously, we ultimately were given a penalty, which was put away. And I did look it up. Greg Monroe was making his professional debut in this game for Hartford Athletic. Honestly, very unfortunate. That's the worst way to make your professional debut. Come on with 6 minutes left. Somebody's given up a penalty and then you concede that. But that's how professional soccer goes for a lot of people, I'm sure. Hopefully he has a lot more chances than just this one game. Yeah, either way, though, I noted multiple chances in the first half where I think we talked about this with Hartford last week, where we talked about where we should especially look for their chances. And a lot of those chances are going to come over the top. So this is where Hartford had any of their chances. They were mostly trying to bunker and counter. That's probably something that we could have expected as well. And what were they trying to do when they had the ability to counter was they were just looking for the quickest ball over the top of our back line for Michi and Galena, who is pretty fast with the ball at his feet, and he's also pretty good at scoring. So yeah, he did not actually put them in the net this game. I think the week before it was that he had a double, so good enough for us. But there were multiple chances that I recalled from the first half in which they did get that ball over the top, or they just played it very quickly in transition, going from their defensive bunker into an attacking position, and then they got a very good chance off. They had one in the 28th minute and the 30th minute that I had myself noted here. A very good chance for them off the corner. So that's something that is fair enough. You can get a good chance off a corner, and Jordan Farr did save that one. But in the 30th minute, there was a longer ball that came out where Jordan Farr actually just missed the ball. I remember that one entirely. And yeah, he missed it. Hartford got a good shot off, but by the time they had got the shot, actually, Jordan Farr had put himself back into the box where he could get in front of the shot, and he pushed it over the bar. So thank God for that, because it wasn't a wide open net, but it could have been pretty bad. So those were two big chances that I remember from the first half. And I don't know if either of those were specifically counted as XG, but the other one that I really wanted to bring up was, which one was that? In the 64th minute, this was after, obviously, Hartford had gone down a man. But the Rowdies defense, we just totally got caught out. Completely got caught out. And getting back numbers into positions that we needed to protect our goal was actually impossible in this situation. Aaron Guillen was beat down his side. And I think it was Deshane Beckford who had the ball at the edge of the box on their right side. Obviously, for Aaron Guillen, it was our left side. He put the ball over the couple of defenders. I think it was Guillen and maybe Jordan Doherty, who were still in the box itself. But right at the back post was Marcus Epps, completely open at, I think, roughly the penalty spot, completely open. All he had to do was put his foot on the ball, and it was almost guaranteed to go in. Very luckily for us, I don't know if he just had stars in his eyes and all of a sudden it was too much to focus and he couldn't do it. It was unfortunate for him, but obviously very good luck for us that he did not actually complete that, because if he did, the goal was wide open for him to put it in, and that would have been the 1-0, and we could have seen this out just the exact same way that it played against Oakland. Past all that, Hartford was very good at defending, and they were able to keep themselves organized in a way that obviously kept us out of most of the chances that we have created against other teams. So it comes down to that thing that a lot of teams in certain situations face. And I'm not trying to make any comparisons between the Rowdies and other teams. This is just something that you see at other clubs where they end up dominating through possession, and the other team has to defend all day. How do you break that down? How do you break through it? Well, we didn't do the best job of that in this one. Josh Perez, I thought, had a pretty good game. He was also trying to get back a little bit deeper from the two attackers, who in this case were Charlie Dennis and Cal Jennings, just to highlight where people were lining up. But Josh Perez would again drop a little bit deeper, try to pick up the ball, and in doing that, try to create the space for the two attackers, Dennis and Jennings, so that they had some room to maneuver up top. Unfortunately, that didn't work out a ton. And when Josh Perez got in the middle, we did not see him create the chances that he did against Louisville, which, if we remember from last week, were even present in, you could see it in the highlights, just how well he was doing in that position. But I think that it was just the way that Hartford plays, that they're going to be sitting a lot deeper, and they're probably going to be a lot more defensively inclined than Louisville, where Louisville are trying to win the ball up closer to our box. Hartford are
Especially
perfectly
down a
content.
man.
Yeah, Hartford are perfectly content to sit way back. As you said, if they're down a man, they're not going to do anything unless they have a clear shot, which they still found in the second half. So it was very difficult for us to break that down. Eddie Manjoma started on the left, Pacific Nyongabire on the right, and they were effective at times. Their crossing was not effective, I will point out. Eventually, I think it was Pacific who went off, and then Eddie Manjoma switched to the right side. Josh Perez dropped into the left wing back spot, which he didn't look the most comfortable at, but he also wasn't terrible, I will say. And then Blake Bodley, we saw him come back on to make his return from a short-lived injury. So there are positives to be taken out of this. We got 3 points. A win is a win. And as we've already mentioned, Carlos, you hammered this point home. This was the weekend that we needed to get a win.
Yeah.
So that's really, really important. That's fantastic. We did get Blake Bodley literally back from injury. That is positive. Charlie Dennis and Zach Harivo also coming back from injury. Charlie Dennis a lot more so at this point. Those are all positives. So we can look at it that way, but the other thing that needs to be pointed out is this very easily could have been another one where we go on the road, we play a team that's below us in the standings, and we end up blowing the points, and again potentially could have lost this one. Now,
one kick away from it,
very on multiple occasions. So we ultimately. Why does the real question is this? Why does this keep happening? Why do these great games come against Louisville, against Sacramento, against I'm forgetting the other. The other one was in the Open Cup where we very, very easily could have won that game, but Dallas had converted their only 2 chances of the game. How often does that happen? So those were very good games, and in between them, we had really bad games against teams that we should all expect to go and maybe not roll over, but definitely beat. So, Carlos, that's the big question. I wanted to start. What is your opinion on that? I mean, I have my opinion, but I wanted to hear where you were leaning first.
Yeah. So I think there's a natural and obviously reasonable understanding that if the other team goes down a player, you're gonna pretty comfortably be able to go in and get the points, right? I mean, we had basically an entire second half up a player and a few minutes more. But like you said, I mean, and as we saw in the game, it was pretty obvious that, the chance creation still wasn't there despite, having that extra player, quote unquote. But Hartford didn't really change their game plan, and their game plan from the beginning was kind of as if they were playing down a player already, if that makes any sense, right?
Yeah.
I'm not like the biggest tactician when it comes to the world of soccer. My expertise comes in laying out a 4-3-3 on FIFA and playing it to my fast guys down the wing, and a little bit of Football Manager. But it's really obvious, and I think the casual soccer fan can even see this. That obviously, when you go down a player, you're going to put all your guys behind the ball and hope for the counter attack. And for whatever reason, the Rowdies have consistently struggled to find how to penetrate a team that's sitting basically entirely behind the ball. Whether it's 10 players or 11 players, it's obviously most of the time been 11 players behind the ball. Robbie Nielsen's Rowdies have not really figured out how to penetrate that, defending. And again, it was pretty good defending from Hartford. We talked a lot about how boring the Rowdies have looked in this game. But the Hartford defending, their game plan was almost completed to a perfection, right?
Yeah.
They almost pulled that off. The Epps goal was so close to being a really, really nice goal for them. And our goal was a penalty, right? And then, the Hartford goalie, Ribeiro, made a couple incredible saves, particularly the one against Arteaga.
Which is something you have to rely on if you're playing in that defensive way anyway.
Exactly. And again, you mentioned that chance in the first half when Jordan Farr missed the ball when he was coming out for it. And they had a really, really good look there. And somehow Jordan Farr was able to come back and make contact on that ball when it was shot at him. So there's plenty of opportunities here for Hartford, despite playing behind the ball the whole game, despite going down a man and continuing to play behind the ball the whole game. Their game plan didn't really change. And for whatever reason, that has been an incredible challenge for the Rowdies to figure out. talking about Joshua Perez, you mentioned he didn't create the chances he was able to create against Louisville in this game. I think it's entirely because it was a different game. Like, it was so different. Obviously, Louisville is a significantly better team, quote unquote, right? It's a team that's at the top of the table. It's a really good roster and a team that isn't going away to sit behind the ball. Like, they're coming to Al Lang Stadium, but unlike some other teams who are maybe further down the table when they go to Al Lang Stadium, oh, sorry, text notification. Louisville's going to come out and play as if they're at home. They're going to play no different from if they were at home. They're coming out. It's more of a free-flowing game. They're not sick, right? And I think that's more conducive to like Robbie Nielsen's Rowdies. It's like more free-flowing, more allowing for Joshua Perez to kind of create that space, create the opportunities he's been able to all season. When it's so compact like this, like, again, for whatever reason, this Rowdy squad has not figured out how to break that down. Or if we have, it's been barely like this. Like, we haven't broke it down, but somehow we get by with a penalty or some goal like this. But I think we've seen a couple games like this year already. And I'm sorry if I'm blanking right now. I can't particularly think of another great example off the top of my head. But games where a team's going to sit back and we're really struggling to scrape by. And I think that's the right word for it. You use the word scrape by for this game because that's what it was. Like, it was really, really tough. It was a grind. And somehow, even Hartford being down a player, they still, like you said, even came very, very close to not only going out of there with a point, but leaving with all 3 points. And that was really, really, really unfortunate. Another game I'll think of, I'm just looking back, was El Paso game. El Paso is one of the teams that came in and sat back on the ball the whole time, sat back behind the ball the whole time. We were lucky to get a goal on that one, and they scored that wonder goal that you surely remember. So El Paso was one of them. Pittsburgh kind of when we went away to Pittsburgh and they were in pretty bad form. North Carolina sort of did that when we went away to North Carolina. These teams that kind of like know that I think we're going in, we're probably the better team. They're going to play this game Hartford played, and this Rowdy squad just hasn't been able to figure out how to counter that. And most of the times the other teams are decent enough to be able to hold on to that result pretty late into the game. So if we get the win, it's going to be something crazy like this, a penalty, some incredible saves from the other goalie, despite like fighting all that. We need something like special. There was no like moment of individuality like we've pointed to in the past, right? In the game of like, oh wow, it's an incredible Charlie Dennis goal, or Cal Jennings took on all 3 players one-on-one and was able to score that lovely goal. It seems like we've needed moments like that to get by some of these games. So it's unfortunate, and it's kind of concerning because this is still a lot of season to be played. We're going to run into teams that are going to sit back behind the ball like this because this is how they're going to play against a really good Rowdy squad. Mm-hmm. I don't know if Loudon will play like that this weekend. I think it's kind of up in the air. We'll talk about that more in the preview, but that's kind of a squad that's been pretty good in the attack, actually. So I wouldn't be surprised if they come out and play more of an attacking game. Yeah. But we'll run into this type of game again, is my point, this season, multiple times. And we don't want to drop points against bad teams, especially when it seems like we're climbing up the table and closing that gap with Louisville. Now that we're back in that race, it'd be really unfortunate to drop points against in these types of games. So I hope this is something that Robbie Nielsen is kind of thinking about as well. I'm sure he is. He gets paid to do this, and we just do this kind of for fun. And if we're thinking about it, I'm sure he is. So I'm taking solace in that. But like you said, it's happened repeatedly, and I hope we can figure that out. It's not abnormal for a team to struggle with this type of game plan either. By the way, like we've seen that, like, I don't know, even in the Euros earlier today, like. And in the Euros throughout the tournament, and in any tournament, when there's a team there's a pretty significant talent gap, that worst team is going to sit back and that better team is always going to struggle to break it down. The Rowdies aren't an exception to that right now. Hope we can figure that out. But I think it's a really good point you're raising because it's a little bit concerning. Do you see it any differently, or am I rambling about something that doesn't exist here?
I mean, no, I do think that you're correct about that. The only other thing that I'm going to point out here, and this was something that I brought up as well against Oakland. At the time, I said that I didn't want to assign this to any given game because it's hard to know what's in players' heads. It's hard to know what's going on in the locker room if you're not in the locker room. and that's obviously true. But I'm gonna just go ahead and say it here because I do think that there was a lack of intensity in this game for large stretches from Tampa Bay. And I will say that I think at certain moments, in addition to it is hard to break down a team that's going to sit back, Hartford wasn't sitting back the way teams sit back against just using another similar situation, not trying to compare, but Hartford doesn't sit back the way that other teams who play Manchester City sit back, obviously. So I really think that at a certain point, they are defending and they are looking to counter for the most part in their game. At the same time, I think that the Rowdies did have a little bit of complacency in this one. I didn't necessarily want to make the leap in the game against Oakland. I think that I remember saying explicitly that I wouldn't do it just for that one because, like I said, it's hard to put that on any given game. But this one very much looked to me like it was lacking in intensity for the Rowdies at times. And maybe I'm missing something. Maybe that's down to something else, who can say for sure. But if we're in this position and I have the microphone that everyone can see right here, I might as well just say that it did look to me like they were a little complacent in this game. And I don't like saying that because, I mean, being a professional and getting ready for every single week is very difficult. And you're naturally going to have different game states or different head states for different games, because Louisville City, that's a rival already. They're at the top of the table. They're all, there's a laundry list of reasons that your blood is going to be boiling before you even get onto the field versus Louisville City. Hartford, it's raining. It's a plastic pitch. We've already talked about Connecticut being a weird little armpit of a state. It's there's plenty to be less excited about for that game. So I have a feeling that did get into this game. Did it for Oakland? Maybe, maybe not. Did it for other ones that you had already mentioned? Maybe, maybe not. But I will put my neck on the line, if that's how I want to phrase it, for this one, and say that I do think that there was complacency involved in this game. And that's something that also needs to be rooted out at some point. Do the Rowdies have to get kind of punched in the nose before they start to wake up in these games? I don't know. I hope not, because in certain situations, we're not going to be able to come back. That's what happened against the Roots. So I'm glad that we didn't actually get that punch, though we almost did multiple times versus Hartford.
Yeah, multiple times. Again, we're live right now on all of the platforms, whatever platform you're watching on. If you're watching us live, feel free to shoot any questions, comments, what you think about this Hartford game. If you think we're rambling nonsense right now, you feel free to.
We do that sometimes.
We do that sometimes. Tell James while he's wrong. I know I'm right. I've never been wrong in my life, but James has always been wrong. So feel free to tell him why he's wrong. If you're not watching live, follow us on Twitter. Let us. That's how you know when we're gonna go live, right? So you can see our pretty faces. Got a new fade last week. Shout out to Rini on Hillsborough Avenue. Join the conversation. It's always more fun when I can check Twitter and see what people are saying about this game. Yeah, like you said, it was a weird one. I was really frustrated watching this one the whole time. Yes. More than anything, it was a boring one. It was just it felt like a really serious waste of time between the broadcast quality and what we weren't doing and what Hartford was doing. And I think you point out something interesting and important about the lack of intensity. And I think that's why I fantastically love, that's a word, right? I don't know what I'm talking about. That's why I love having a guy like Damian Rivera coming off the bench, by the way. Because this is a guy that hasn't once come in and not shown a burst of energy that the team needed at that time. Damian Rivera obviously came in and drew the penalty, but apart from that, this is a guy that comes in, he's young, he just shows that burst of energy, and he's one of the few players on this team that isn't afraid to take opponents on one-on-one, dribble by them, show his flash of skill. That's what he does. That's what he does best, and he does it in the attack. We've had guys that come in and kind of do that in their own role. I always think of Daniel Harris as one of my favorite examples of that. You come in, show that flash of quality on the wingback spot. But Damian Rivera is someone that does this like in the attack. Like he's willing to go in and take someone on in the box and score a goal. Leo Fernandez seemed like he did this too back in that like MVP season. You need guys like that. And if they can come off the bench, sometimes that's even better than having them start, right? Because this is a game where, you know, despite maybe wanting a bit more from the game plan from Coach Robbie Nielsen and whatnot, this was the right move. Bringing in Damian Rivera was objectively the right move here. Throw in that spark of energy, let the kid run, let the kid make something special, because we weren't going to penetrate that Hartford team with what we were doing.
Clearly.
It wasn't happening. Yeah, it was not happening. Like throwing in the crosses was not working, despite that, you know, being our game plan every game. It wasn't working against this team. So you need that spark of energy. You need a moment, like I said earlier, a little moment of like individuality, a moment of like, wow, that was really cool. And, you know, despite that not really being what we saw from Damian Rivera on that drawing that penalty, it was that moment of individual, you know, just excellence. Just take a guy on and see what happens. And in a game like this, it seems like that's what you needed. And Damian Rivera did that perfectly. So I think that was really, really good to see. Again, because of that lack of energy, the lack of intensity that kind of characterized the second half. It almost felt like we kind of expected the goal to come eventually, but no one was willing to step up and be the one to make it happen.
Right. Yeah.
Damian Rivera was someone to, you know, step in and make sure something like that happens. So that's why I always love seeing, like, Damian Rivera is an awesome player, an awesome player. He probably could start in, you know, in any of these games. It seems like he has a quality for it, but I really like him coming off the bench because of situations like this. And even when we're up like 1-0 or 2-0, right? It's especially that 2-0 lead we always seem to get scared with. In that 2-0 situation, maybe the intensity drops a little bit late in the game. We're up 2-0, 70 minutes into the game. You need a spark of energy again to make sure like we don't step off the gas. We don't sit too far deep in our own half and let the other team come at us. That's a Damian Rivera moment. And he seems to do that well. And I'm kind of like not just talking about this game anymore. I'm talking about this early part of the season already. As a whole, he's shown that in multiple occasions, including the game-winning goal recently, right, against Louisville. So this is a guy I love having as a super sub. I pray to my God, and I hope you pray to whatever you believe in, that Damian Rivera doesn't get recalled by New England Revolution the same way our last Spalding. Ryan Spalding. Yeah, I'm sorry, I blanked on that. Spalding Sanity was recalled when he was showing his flashes of brilliance. Damian Rivera, please stay with us. And Ryan Spalding, come back. Why not? I don't know if you're I haven't kept up with what's going on in your life, but if you need a spot to play soccer, come on back. So again, that was a long-winded way of saying Damian Rivera came in and changed this one for the better. Like you said, thank God for Damian Rivera. And this one, he is an incredible super sub, and I love him coming off the bench. Maybe we can ask some questions about why Arteaga was on the bench for so long, you know, in a game that needed some sort of attack, right? Why was he on the bench to start with, maybe? But regardless, we came out with the 3 points. We need to figure this thing out, you know, when teams sit back on us, sit back behind the ball. But I take serious comfort in knowing we have a guy like Damian Rivera that can come off the bench and make that happen. So this was all things considered, despite how like somewhat apathetically James and I have talked about this game, like this was a really, really huge weekend for the Rowdies, and a weekend that if things go our way later on this season, we'll look back on with great fondness, despite how boring this game was. The 3 points were the 3 points. And arguably, even more importantly, Charleston tied, Louisville lost, and Indy lost, and we have a game in hand on all of them. We're in a good spot.
Yeah.
This game this weekend is going to be huge because we need to keep building on that momentum. But looking at this weekend in particular, things could not have gone much better. Maybe we could have had a more exciting game. Sure, I'll give you that. But as far as the results go, things could not have gone better at all. Unless Charleston lost, and I guess things could have gone better. But point stands. We can take the second place spot this weekend and cut that gap that Louisville has on us to just a 4-point gap. That's really cool.
Yeah. That's very important to keep in mind while we look forward to the game that we're going to preview. But before we do that, Carlos, we have to do our man of the match Who was your man of the match for this game against Hartford?
Yeah, this was honestly a pretty difficult one to pick. It was not a thrilling one because of everything we just talked about. So I'm going to take Pacific Nyangabire, not because he had a particularly thrilling game or anything, but because he had a solid enough game. And that's kind of all you can ask for in a game like this. He created a couple really good looks for us. In a game that had very few of them. He seemed to be kind of at the center of a couple of them. So he was highlighted for me as man of the match. Fop Mob seemed to agree with me. So that's kind of validating for me. Thank you, Fop Mob. Also, Paraguay just scored a goal, by the way. So they're down 2-1. If you're watching this podcast live or listening to this podcast live, and maybe have that game on another screen. I hope I didn't spoil that for you. Yeah. So thank you, Pacific Nyangabire, for having a pretty decent game. Whatever. I mean, give us something a bit more as a whole from the team. Like it was whatever. Nyangabire was just the one that stood out just a little bit more than maybe the rest of our rather dull performance from the rest of the players. I mean, I guess we got a shutout. So shout out the back line. That's important. Yeah. But yeah, Pacific Nyangabire, man of the match. He's had a good season. I really like where he's at. And yeah, if he keeps starting, I think things are going to get even better and better for him. So good season so far. Big things coming for him still.
Yep, I agree with that. My man of the match, however, is not Pacific Nyangabire. It is somebody that Carlos was just ranting and raving about because I was saving my ranting and raving until now. Damian Rivera is my man of the match. This is actually his second week in a row winning that award from either myself or Carlos. So congratulations to him on that as well. But yes, Mr. Rivera was the reason that we won this game. He came off the bench when Hartford was tired, and he offered something that we did not have up until he had been on the field. Obviously, all of that is very positive. But the way that I really wanted to put this was it's very succinct. It's a very common aphorism in soccer is he was able to take the game by the scruff of the neck. That is something that you will hear English commentators say all the time. And that is what Damian Rivera did this past weekend. He came on. Yeah, he came on and he provided that burst of energy that you were talking about. He's also got the technical ability to just run at people. If you cannot disorganize a team by passing around them, eventually you're probably just going to need to start running at them and trying to pull players out of position by the sheer gravity of having a good technical player with the ball at his feet, and everybody closes in on him and then he can find somebody. He didn't actually get to do that today because somebody Friday because somebody brought him down in the box, but it worked out and we got the penalty that we needed. And it was also a deserved penalty. So yeah, good job to Mr. Rivera. We appreciate the fantastic work that you did this past weekend, both Carlos and myself. But yes, Carlos, before we move on, I'm going to turn it over to you because I feel like I'm forgetting something again here. But
James,
what is this? We did this before, right?
You have one job, dude. Like, what the hell? How you still forget? Anyway, this Saturday, there's one place to be and one place only. And that's Berry House Beer Company in Ybor City in Tampa, Florida on June 29th, this Saturday, 7 p.m. Your Tampa Bay Rowdies are playing Loudoun United in a really important game, as we've mentioned a little bit, and we'll talk about this game a bit more in just a second. It's a big one. It's an opportunity to close that gap with Louisville. Close the gap on Louisville, with Louisville. You get my point. Point being, Berry House Beer Company, award-winning beer pitcher specials throughout the game, and a halftime swag giveaway. I can't think of a better place to be at 7 p.m. on Saturday, June 29th. There is a live pregame show at 6:15. You can be there. You can join in. You can give us your thoughts. You can contribute to the content. It's a fun one. This is going to be a good time. There's good food, great people. And again, like I said earlier, more important than anything that I've just said, it's an opportunity to watch more Rowdies games with your Rowdies family. Again, we'll make Berry House Beer Company feel a bit like Al Lang on the other side of the bay in Tampa, Florida. So come join us, Berry House Beer Company, Berry House Beer Company in Ybor City, 1403 East 5th Avenue in Tampa, Florida. We'll have a really, really good time. I'm so excited. It's been a while since I've been able to be at one. I'm finally back at home, and I'll be there with Eureka. We'll have a good time and watch, hopefully, a really, really good Rowdies win. And to talk about what we need to do to get that Rowdies win, James, let's jump into it. Again, we're playing Loudoun United this weekend. 7:30, at a lovely little field in Leesburg, Virginia. I've been there a couple times, close to where I studied in Georgetown. It was like, 30-40 minute drive. It would actually be such a great place to watch soccer if people actually went to the game. And I've
Yeah,
said this
it doesn't
before,
look that bad.
it's a really, really nice little stadium. I love it. It's awesome. They have a great little vibe going over there. If they had people going, it would be awesome. But point stands, we're playing over there. It's a nice field. And we've had relative success over there when we've been over there. So I'm not too concerned about the field quality, or our recent lack of success over there, because we're doing all right in Sager Field in Leesburg, Virginia. Loudoun United are just in the playoff spots with 19 points from their 15 games played. After a loss to LAFC in the Open Cup, they've won twice and then drawn twice more. They like playing in something of a 3-4-3. Their lineup can change based on loans from DC United. It seems like this is one of those last few teams, James, in the USL that kind of is the holdout. It's essentially the reserve of an MLS squad. With all due respect to Loudoun United, I hate that still exists in the USL. It's truly one of the last holdouts, and I'm hoping that kind of either, I don't know. I'm not sure there's much hope for an independent Loudoun United in Leesburg, Virginia. But it is what it is. In that, you have Hugo Farrow, likely, with Keegan Hughes, Jacob Erlandson, Robbie Dembro in front of him. In front of them, you've had Kwane Awua and Keegan Tingy, the wingbacks, outside of Drew Skundrick and Tommy McCabe. Tommy McCabe is a name you might be familiar with. He's had some pretty good games and has made it regularly into the USL Twitter. It feels like I always see Tommy McCabe's name popping up when talking about Loudoun United's game. He's a huge, huge player for them. Arguably, even bigger for Loudoun has been Florian Velo. He's had a couple really good games for Loudoun. And Zach Ryan, another great attacking piece for them. He's been pretty good for Loudoun this year. Did miss a penalty for them in this game against Miami, but certainly shouldn't be a mark on his record. He's had a pretty good year for them. And also Riley Boudoir is your other Loudoun attacker. So this is a team that is solid enough. Zach Ryan leads the team, as I've said. He's a solid attacker. He has 5 goals. I'm ahead of Velo, who has 3. Velo, Awua, and Ryan all have 3 assists. And those 3 also lead in the chances created and big chances charts. So defensively, this team is not awful. We shouldn't necessarily, like we've talked about with teams that are worse than us, we probably shouldn't expect to roll over them. They're solid enough. This is a Loudoun team that, and I feel like I've said this the last 2 years in a row, like keep an eye out on Loudoun. It seems like they're doing something a little special over there.
Yeah.
They're not really, but they're better than they used to be.
Yes.
When the Loudoun game was like a 5-0 win for us. I think that was actually the scoreline of one of our games against them. So this isn't a team, like you said, like you mentioned in our notes here, James, that we should expect to roll over. That being said, they've only beaten us once in our 10 games against them. So the record against us is not historically great. But I don't know. They're better. They're better than they were in the past. They're not great still. They're, I guess, on paper, on the table, slightly better than Hartford Athletic, but not by much. It'll be a good one. They score a decent amount of goals too. So we're playing away. I don't know. This one kind of feels like a trap game for me.
Could be.
I feel like, yeah, it has the makings of it, James, but I feel like we've talked enough about how important this one is. I feel like the Rowdies players probably understand this one's a really important one. And I don't imagine we'll make the same mistake to this one, rather sleepy. The way we did against Hartford, the way we did against Oakland. It seems like, I don't know. I feel like if I'm saying this as an unpaid podcaster for the Tampa Bay Rowdies, it feels like Robbie Nielsen certainly, probably, hopefully understands this. That this is a really, really big one to make up ground on the table. I hope we learned our lessons from the last couple games against teams that we might think are worse, quote unquote, than us. So I hope all those things taken in consideration, we can figure out what we need to do. I don't think this team will play like Hartford did, sitting behind the ball as much. So hopefully that allows for a more free-flowing game that kind of fits the Rowdies style. Yeah. By the way, I went back to fact check myself. It wasn't 5-0 that we beat Loudoun that one time. It was 8-0.
Yeah, I was just about to pull that up.
Yeah, that was a crazy game. I just checked on FOTMob. There's 6 different goal scorers in that one. Harris scored 2, Nkosana, Dalgard, Lacava, Castellanos. Oh my goodness. Remember Castellanos? He played like a few games and was injured the whole time. Yeah, that was really cool. Oh, Gonzalez, he scored 2 goals. I miss him. Okay, James, more importantly, this isn't that team. This is this team, a team we talked about extensively because it's our team. How is this game going to look on Saturday against the infamous, the powerful, the mighty Loudoun United Football Club?
Well, this is another game, just like you said, it could be a trap game because I have a feeling that the Rowdies are going to approach this game, let's say, the way that they have approached the last couple of games that have been in a rather similar position. So we went up against Oakland Roots. Oakland Roots is not a team that was doing particularly well up until that time. They beat us and then they beat Sacramento, although I think they lost this past weekend. So maybe they are a better team than they were. Either way, we did not approach that game with the proper intensity that we needed. It was another one that was on a small field, turf, all those things to keep in mind. So then we beat Louisville at Al Lang, and that's all very good. This past weekend, we go to Hartford, and we play on a small field. It's turf, and we barely get away with a win. At least we got the win. This is something to keep in mind when we go to Segra Field. Now, Carlos, you said you've been there. I believe that this is a full-size field. It's just that it's also on turf. Am I correct with that?
Honestly, I don't remember if it's on turf or not.
Okay.
Someone will have to fact check me on that one. But it's a full-size field. It's actually a really nice complex. The field's fine enough. I mean, it hasn't seemed to have affected the Rowdies in the same way that turf has on other fields.
Right. Yes.
Obviously, because we've done significantly better over there than we have in a field like Pittsburgh or any other, turfy or weird field.
Yeah.
This one doesn't seem to have affected us as much, James.
So that's all something to keep in mind. And I really think that the added width is going to help us maintain the usual rhythms of the game, the usual patterns, our usual possession that we can all hope for, because possession is the way that the Rowdies generally like to approach a game, generally like to create chances. So if we can do that, we are a better team, certainly on paper. It's unfortunate to say it like this, but as it turns out, most of these players could be considered rejected from other USL teams. Drew Skundrich was previously with Sacramento, and he's just not making the grade anymore. Tommy McCabe was with, I don't remember which team, but either way, the point is he's not with that team anymore. It was Detroit City, and he is now here at Loudoun United. Loudoun United, as you also pointed out, is the backup team, reserve team for DC United for the most part. So they're still academy kids in their roster usually for game days. Yeah, but these are guys, the rest of the roster that isn't DC United Academy players, unfortunately, it's going to be players who usually did not get a club elsewhere. So if we play the way that we can up to our own standards, we should have no chance in this game. The real problem is just whether or not that happens, because if it doesn't happen, we can lose to anybody. We can lose to Oakland Roots. We could lose to Hartford. And we could certainly lose to Loudoun United. They are probably better than both of those teams. I mean, in the standings, they are better than Hartford. So there's that to keep in mind. But Zach Ryan is very dangerous, and this is going to be their biggest threat. He's very fast, plays up top, and he's probably going to be a player who looks to get in behind the way Michie and Galena does. They're just going to try and do that in a little bit different way because, as you said, they're not going to be looking for those long, quick balls over the top in transition when they are mostly defending. So, yeah, it's just something that we need to keep in mind. And it'll be interesting to see where our 3 defenders line up again. Aaron Guillen was on the left, like he usually is. Jordan Doherty was actually in the middle versus Hartford, and Freddie Kleeman was on the right. And I don't know if that came down to Freddie Kleeman being based in a specific spot to try and keep long balls from hitting Michie and Galena on the run from Tristan Hodge, the left back at Hartford. He is their #1 assister at this point. So maybe Tristan Hodge being on the left side, we put Freddie Kleeman kind of in his way to put those little balls over the top for Galena. I don't know, but we will have to see exactly how that plays out with their positioning again this week versus Loudoun and see if that has any impact. Either way, though, Carlos, I think that we have gone through this. Are you ready to get into the predictions here?
I will. I do want to just say one more thing before I jump into my prediction. They tied against Miami FC 2-2 in Miami. And I just want to kind of condemn them for that because Miami had been on a 7-game losing streak, like literally just losing 7 games in a row. So Pittsburgh to Indy to Phoenix, North Carolina, 4-0 against North Carolina at home. What the hell? To Louisville, obviously Louisville's a really good team. To Las Vegas, 3-1. To FC Tulsa, 2-1. Tulsa's in terrible form. But thankfully, Loudoun United for Miami gave them not a loss. So that's kind of nice for Miami. And I don't know, maybe it says a little bit about Loudoun United. They're a pretty decent team, like we said, but tying against Miami FC, this Miami FC is kind of embarrassing. I don't think they're going to be happy with that. I know they're going to want to bounce back from that because they're going to want more than that 1 point against Miami FC. I'm sure they're going to try and take out their anger on the Tampa Bay Rowdies. And I think they're going to have a really good game. I think they're going to play really well, actually. It's going to be a close one. I think this game ends 2-1 Rowdies. It's going to be a close one. I don't think we keep the shutout. Like, Loudoun has a really solid squad, honestly, despite everything we've talked about and how not great they've been historically, despite how often we beat them. Again, that's 8 wins against them in 10 games, 1 draw and 1 loss. I don't think we're going to make the same mistakes we have in the last few games against worst opponents, quote unquote. But I do think this will be a close one. I do think it'll be a good game. I do think we're going to play well, but I do think Loudoun will play well as well. They're playing at home. They have actually had some decent performances against us in at Sager Field. Not insanely good performances. Obviously, they don't really win much against us, but they've had good performances, and I've been at a couple of them. But the Rowdies have still managed to go by and win. So that is my prediction. By the way, I forgot. I was looking at Florian Valot's like career history just now. I didn't realize he played so many games for like Red Bulls and MLS.
Yeah,
he had like 40 plus games for Red Bulls. Had a brief stop in FC Cincinnati for a few games, and MLS as well. So again, this is a team that has some talent. I mean, Zach Ryan, like you mentioned, is one of them. But I think Florian Valot is probably the name to keep an eye on in this one. Kind of wild card. Obviously, was at Miami FC those last 2 seasons. That's kind of who I see him with the most. Had some good seasons there. Could have a good game against the Rowdies. But I do think we'll come out with a 2-1 win. I'm sorry, James, because your prediction might be similar.
In fact, it is the same one. Yes, I predicted when I wrote up this detail for today's show, I did the 2-1 win as well. So 2-1 win for both of us, and Eureka has chosen a win as well. He kept the clean sheet, 2-0 to the Tampa Bay Rowdies. So keep that in mind. Now, folks, if you didn't catch the whole show live, you can catch the replay on demand at youtube.com/RBLR Sports. Please keep that in mind if you would like to take in the rest of it. It will be on all podcast platforms, of course, in the morning. And if you're listening to this on our podcast in the morning, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate that. Carlos, let's get now to our extra time segment, because extra time is something that you and I were actually started this episode with, talking about all the other soccer that's going on, in addition to the lovely Rowdies games that we are hoping to see go very well this weekend.
Yeah. We got through the meat and potatoes, the most important stuff, your Tampa Bay Rowdies content, that game against Hartford, that important win against Hartford, the important results from the rest of the Eastern Conference, and looking ahead to this important one against Loudoun. By the way, there's a watch party for that at Berry House. But other than that, there's other soccer going on, James. The U.S. won its first Copa America game. Ecuador, unfortunately, we lost ours to Venezuela. I think oh my God, it's so frustrating. Ecuador, I genuinely believe, and this is biased, but I genuinely believe Ecuador is one of the best rosters in South America right now. And it's so unfortunate because it's just not clicking for whatever reason. Whatever. Doesn't matter. Copa America is undergoing. Actually, currently live, Colombia and Paraguay are playing. I think, Colombia's still winning 2-1.
Yep.
It's a good game. Whatever. Watch all the soccer. There's so much stuff going on. The Euros are going on. Rest in peace to Scotland.
Yeah, I'm not watching that anymore.
Yeah, grand opening, grand closing, sadly. It was a fun one though, James. It was a fun one while it lasted. I'm glad we got to hear.
I think that we got some daylight robbery going on, but I will leave that out of this podcast because I've already bitched about it enough.
You know what? I'm glad we got to hear "Flower of Scotland" in the stadiums at a Euros tournament. That was lovely to hear.
It is legitimately one of the best anthems out there, if you ask me. I think the American anthem is way too long, and especially for a sporting ceremony, it takes ages.
I have so many takes about the American national anthem at sporting events that I will save for another hour-long podcast. But the Scottish national anthem is so much passion behind it. Oh, I'm so glad I got to hear it at the Euros on TV at least. I'm sure, even though despite the results, I'm sure all of our Scottish friends had a good time at the game. I know all of our small Rowdies contingent from Scotland made an appearance at the Euros as well, so that was lovely to see. But yeah, Copa America is ongoing. Euros are ongoing. So much soccer going on. It's the summer of soccer, as has been branded by Fox Sports and Univision and whatnot. The Olympics are coming up. So much soccer to watch among all the other sports there. Yeah, James, a ton of stuff to watch. If you want to get to Berry House early, sure, go early and watch all the other
There you go.
on Saturday as well.
Yep.
I can't imagine there's a much better spot to watch all of the soccer on Saturday before the Rowdies. Switzerland versus whoever they play at 12, Germany versus whoever they play at 3, Loudon at 7:30 versus the Rowdies, Argentina and Peru at 8, Canada and Chile at 8. There's so much soccer, James. And the next day, on Sunday, Mexico plays Ecuador. Oh my God, there's so much stuff to talk about. Ecuador plays Jamaica in 2 days. It's gonna be a blast. More importantly than any of that, more importantly, whatever. You get my point. Your Rowdies play this Saturday. Come to the watch party. Show up to Berry House. It's going to be such a good time. There's going to be beer specials. There's going to be halftime swag giveaways. There's going to be award-winning beer. And more importantly, there's going to be plenty of Rowdies family to enjoy the game with you. So much stuff going on. James, it's going to be a good time. Come join us. Again, 7 p.m., Berry House Beer Company, 6:15 p.m., live pregame show.
There you go. Again, folks, you have your marching order. Carlos has provided it. You have to listen to Carlos because, as he said now, he is never wrong. So,
I've never been wrong. Not once. Literally in history. Ask anybody I've ever interacted with. I have 100% accuracy rate in literally everything. My takes are always right. Yeah. Robbie Nielsen, if you need an assistant coach, sign me up. I've never been wrong about my tactics. I know a lot about FIFA. Play FIFA on my Xbox every once in a while, and sometimes I even dabble in Football Manager, so I kind of know what I'm talking about. If you want some tactical advice, James, that's all I have to say. Stop me before I keep rambling.
All right. Well, if I have to stop you, because I'd prefer to leave you rambling, but if I have to, then I will just say thank you, listeners, for tuning in. Thank you, any viewers who tuned in and joined us on all of our live shows. I guess it's one live show, but it is on different platforms. So thank you from wherever you tuned in. If you would like to hear more from RBLR Sports, then you have to know where and when to find us. All of that stuff is on social media. We are at RBLR Sports on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Threads, anywhere that you are. We are too. I am mostly on Twitter at RBLR James K. What about you, Carlos?
At Carlos GPA10 on Twitter. I'm seeing a lot of dialogue about how the Colombia national team jerseys are actually really nice. I want to put this out there as a Colombia national team hater. I think they're incredibly ugly. What the hell is that like red like gradient they got going on down there? I'm not one to speak. The Ecuador jerseys are terrible this year, but I'm putting that out there because I feel like I need to counter this disgusting narrative. James, take it away.
All of my Twitter yesterday was me finding other people complaining about the fact that a very obvious penalty was not even reviewed during our game. So again, I will leave that one there. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in. Please like and subscribe to our podcast. We appreciate when you do that. You can also get the full experience on YouTube. There are full podcasts, if that's all you want, on Spotify, iHeartRadio app, Apple, Google Podcasts. You know all of that stuff. Please find us there. We will see you in the future for another live show after a Rowdies win versus Loudon United next week. Thank you for tuning in. Come on, you Rowdies.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.